Survive in Advance, as you just heard from Steve Risley. Survive in Advance is back. I'm your co-host for Survive in Advance, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host for the 1981 national champion, Indiana Hoosiers, and a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Help me welcome Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Hello, Michael.
That was annoying, Steve. All right,
sorry.
We're going to talk a little sports news here. We're going to do this a few times a week. And we're going to start off with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, which switched from Atlanta, Georgia, to Colorado. Steve, you're shaking your head. Does that mean you disagree?
Vehemently.
Tell us why.
Well, I think it was just a cave job done by the Major League Baseball. I think it was ill-founded in how it was handled. I don't think it was researched properly. I think it's another case of this new phrase called cancel culture, and it's a situation here once again that we are kowtowing to certain ethnicities, so be it, certain groups, and we're letting the wrong power people make decisions for us on major events such as this. In a nutshell, that's how I feel about it. We'll get into the details of it, I'm sure, in this discussion.
Well, I think what you say is proven when you have people like Stacey Abrams and you have Senator Warnock, who are both coming out and saying that this is only going to hurt minority business in the Atlanta, Georgia area. It's going to cost them millions of dollars they thought they were going to get. Now they're not going to get it. They're moving it to Colorado. And the other thing is, it was going to be in Atlanta this year. Hank Aaron, who just passed away, a couple months ago, they were going to honor Hank Aaron. I mean, to me, this seems like this was a knee-jerk reaction because a lot of people complained to Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball just didn't want to deal with it, so they just switched it.
Well, Mike, I'm not even sure it was a lot of people. And you're right. And now Warnock and Abrams are backtracking now, claiming that they didn't want the game pulled out of Atlanta. They just wanted the people there to show a platform and use the Major League All-Star Game as a platform to spiel their thing that there are ill-founded voting rights being done in Georgia. And the funny part about that is that all of the major big news channels have handled this in different ways. Of course, CNN and Fox are definitely pro-Democrat. Or CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah.
Fox is Republican. So you're getting both sides of the story. My wife wakes up every morning at 6 o'clock, and I see Dana Perrin, whatever her name is, on Fox. At least she's attractive to look at early in the morning when I wake up. So that I got that going for me. But they put up a list there of the differences in the voting rights between Colorado and Georgia, and essentially they were identical, with the exception that Colorado still requires a voter ID, okay, and Colorado also has 2 less voting days, early voting days. Than
the thing I saw was this, though. In Colorado, they sent everybody ballots the last election. So yeah. I think when you get your news from Fox News,
no. I don't think that's right, Mike. I think Colorado requires you to. Do they send them out blindly, or I thought I read where
they did last election, but that could have just been because of the pandemic.
Well, that was because of the COVID law, where almost everybody did that. But generally, California's law, I think, or Colorado's. You don't even want to know about what's going on in California with voting rights. But Colorado, I thought, had it that you had to prove identification. You could request a ballot, absentee ballot, but you had to request it and prove ID with that. Now you've got me a little confused on that, but I believe that to be right.
This is the thing. I'm looking at it right here. No, I've pulled up the Colorado voting laws.
Okay.
And the major difference between the states is Colorado votes by mail. Every registered voter receives a ballot from 15 to 20 days before the election. And instead of waiting in a line at a polling station, the vast majority simply drop the ballot at a mailbox.
Do they have to put their driver's license or some form of ID on that ballot?
That's what I'm looking for right now. I mean, you don't have to put it on the ballot, but usually, like in Indiana, if I want to register to vote absentee, I have to go to the courthouse, show them my ID to be able to get the absentee ballot.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. California, we live in California. At our house, we received 7 ballots. There's 3 people living here, 3 voting people. We received 7 ballots, all under different names. No need to give proof. We could have filled them all out however we wanted to.
Now, see, this is the thing I don't get, because this is where I call bullshit on all of this, because I don't see a problem with everybody doing absentee ballots, because you have to go in person and tell them who you are, show them your ID. I don't see how not having it or not requiring an ID hurts anybody. In the state of Indiana, you can go get a state ID for free.
Well, that's anywhere in the country.
Yeah,
you go to any licensed branch, anybody can. I do not see how that hurts any one ethnicity or anything to be able to go to a driver's license branch. Like all of us, and actually, once you get one, you can actually renew online. And I mean, every state I've ever been in, you can renew your driver's license online. So you don't even have to suffer the indignity of going to a license branch, which is an indignity for anybody.
Here's the state's ID requirements. All right. This is Colorado requires photo ID to vote. And that's kind of false, because it's not necessarily a photo, because Colorado does require some form of ID when voters register for the first time. But the state accepts 16 different forms of ID. The options include common ID cards like a driver's license, U.S. passport, or government employee ID. Mm-hmm. But Colorado also accepts Medicare and Medicaid cards, college IDs, utility bills, bank statements, and paychecks. Mm-hmm. Colorado does not require ID for mail-in or for mail voting once a person is registered. Instead, the state mails a ballot to the person's home and then matches their signature against the database where the ballot is returned. Georgia allows 6 forms of ID for in-person voting, and the state requires that voters provide a driver's license number, a copy of a state ID card, or a social security card. I don't see how that's racist, Steve. I mean, everybody's got that. Everybody got a social security number, right?
Well, with the influx of illegal aliens coming in here,
kind of my point, Steve.
Yeah, they're now, the way the system's set up now, they're going to be able to vote without being a citizen of the United States. But let's tie this all back to the Major League All-Star Game, which is what we started to do, and what it's here. So this was a snap, knee-jerk reaction. My understanding is that Manafort, the commissioner of baseball, really did.
Yeah, Manfred.
Manfred didn't even really consult with the owners of the teams to make this move. He kind of just looked at it, and my understanding was this was not a surge of people saying you have to move the All-Star Game, you got to stop the All-Star Game kick. This was like people like Stacey Abrams, Warnick, Al Sharpton. My understanding is LeBron James made calls. And LeBron James ought to just stay out of politics and play basketball. That's my opinion of that. But I guess he has the right
How about
to do
this,
it. The profession shouldn't matter.
I think that what he does and what he's become gives him a soapbox he should use. But you don't use it because of lies. And you start at the top. President Biden said that what I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when people are just getting off work. The problem is this. That is a flat out lie by the president. Now we're used to lies by president because that's all they all do. But the thing is this. The law allows counties to set voting hours anywhere between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The new law does lay out that the hours are required as a minimum on election day, saying voting shall be conducted beginning at 9 a.m., ending at 5, as opposed to normal business hours stated in the old law. But normal business hours were widely interpreted as 9 to 5 p.m. anyways. But still, the fact is this. Every place stays open 7 to 7. It doesn't say that it has to be 9 to 5. It says it has to be a minimum of 9 to 5. And I think what we get When your wife's watching Fox News or somebody else is watching MSNBC, they're not getting the truth. And I mean, there's going to be fewer drop boxes.
Right.
And the thing about the drop boxes, it allows voters to submit it. There's going to be less this time around, but that's because hopefully 4 years from now, we won't have a pandemic. They say here that one of the most controversial elements of the bill initially proposed by Republicans was elimination of Sunday early voting. Sunday voting is especially important for black worshipers in Georgia, a strongly Democratic voting bloc, with churchgoers often encouraged to vote after Sunday services with initiatives known as Souls to the Polls. Now, Democratic Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Republicans recently passed a bill to eliminate early voting on Sunday. That is a lie. The final bill actually allows 2 days of early Sunday voting, which is now formally signed into law where it wasn't before. An additional day of mandatory Saturday early voting has also been added. So once again, I think the problem is this. Rob Manfred, there's a decent chance Rob Manfred, somebody called him up and said this is what they're doing, and he just believed it and went with it. I also believe that the society we live in today, it's better not to fight the powers that be, which would be the people in charge right now, the Democrats, and just kowtow to them, because if you don't, they're going to try to destroy you. And I think Manfred probably got a ton of calls, because I think there is a whole group of people here that whenever something happens, will attack it to try to get their way and to try to control the narrative of everything.
Very, very well said. Yeah, I agree entirely. I think, and the sad part to me is that Atlanta, as we alluded to early on, had a big celebration, going to build this All-Star game around arguably one of the greatest baseball players ever to play the game, Hank Aaron, one of the greatest ambassadors of the game. And without thinking about it, they just pull that out from under the rug. And now even if you honor Hank Aaron in Colorado, it doesn't have the meaning of honoring him in Atlanta. Of course, we all understand that. And then secondly, how much damage was done to the small businesses and the people around the stadium in Cobb County that were already preparing to host the All-Star game, a chance to rebuild their businesses. And they, every station's done some interviews with these people, and a lot of them had already spent money stocking up on stuff for fear of it being out of stock if they waited much longer. So they've already invested heavily in this, in preparing for the All-Star game to come, financially and time-wise. And then in the sweep of a couple of days, it's pulled out from them from under the rug. Now they're sitting there again with big bills when they're already sitting with big bills. And it's just ill-founded. And it's another case that Major League Sports cares about nothing but television rights.
Hey, the problem is this. College sports are the same damn way.
Oh, you sure? The NCAA is absolutely no. Only thing is that NCAA calls itself a tax-exempt organization and doesn't pay taxes on what they do.
Yeah, the NFL was like that till recently. So was the NFL. And how about this? I think people are tired of the politics. I don't care what the politics are. People just want to watch the game. And if you look at the numbers, the NCAA basketball championship game, Monday night had 17 million people watch it. The NBA Finals averaged 7 million viewers a game. And I mean, it's not just coronavirus that's caused all this. I mean, hell, I've got to sit there and basically be beaten on because I should feel bad because of the color of my skin when I watch games, Steve. I mean, you see the pregame show for the Super Bowl, it's all they talked about. And I mean, this is stupid. And what we see with the right-left paradigm is, and Charles Barkley, I hate to say this, but said it really eloquently, they want us fighting each other, dividing us by race, so they can go ahead and do whatever the hell they want. And that's what's going on right here. I mean, when we were growing up, I mean, I used to hear people use the N-word all the time. I lived in Indiana, or Aurora, Indiana. There wasn't even a black kid that came to my school until I was like a junior in high school. You heard it all the time. I don't hear that from hardly any of my friends anymore. It's not as bad as it used to be. And I know that makes me evil for saying that, but it's not. And I'm also smart enough to realize this also. The year I was born, 1968, was just a few years removed from the civil rights movement. And I mean, right now, I think the civil rights movement needs to be for anybody that's poor fighting against anybody that's rich, because that's what this has turned into. You have no middle class. And they basically have pitted against each other. They want everybody scared to death. You know, you got to wear your mask in public. And I mean, I was going into Walmart last night or coming out of it, and I didn't have a mask on because I never have worn a mask because I find it stupid. And this dude walks up to me and he says, "You don't have to wear your mask in Walmart anymore?" And I said, "I ain't ever wore my mask in Walmart." But April 6th, they made it so it wasn't mandatory. So he took his mask off and went in, and he looked at me and he said, "It's nice that they're allowing us to be free again."
Yeah, it does seem that that they are gaining control. They're setting everything up through these executive orders seem to come out of nowhere.
You know, and each president gets worse with it.
I know Trump was bad with it. I thought Trump, every time I turn around, I wonder how much legislation Trump actually ever got through Congress.
He didn't have to. He just executive ordered it.
He did executive orders. Now, the downside of executive orders, as Biden proved, you can come right in and change them once somebody changes office, which is what Biden did. He did like 58 or something executive orders on his first day in office, and most of them were repealing things that Trump did, like stop building the wall and let everybody migrate into the United States without will, without.
They were already migrating. They're just migrating more now. But
well, Trump had slowed the process significantly.
You know, Donald Trump.
That's not the point. We're not a political show.
We're not. Why are we talking about something political?
Well, because it tied back to baseball and the Major League All-Star Game.
Hey, Surviving Advance right now is whatever it wants to be. You can talk about whatever you want, Steve.
Very good.
All right.
I want to talk about the Martinsville NASCAR race.
Well, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson instead because he actually plays a sport.
Well, wait, are we coming to a conclusion on the All-Star Game?
I thought we came to a conclusion. They should have left it in Atlanta so it didn't hurt the businesses. I mean, that's what it should be. I mean, the politicians make the laws. They shouldn't, because no man should rule any other man. I've read the Bible. I mean, we're supposed to be ruled by God. I'm not going to listen to anybody else. I don't need anybody else to tell me what I can and can't do. And the problem is the people that own those businesses are not politicians. But in the end, it's the way it always is. The politicians make a decision. Corporations make a decision. And the only people to get hurt are the little guys who actually need that money.
Yeah, I got one last question for you. How many players on the field in Colorado are you think are going to be high at game time?
I don't know, Steve. How many do you think?
I don't know. I don't smoke pot. I've never tried. I've tried a couple gummies before, and they whacked me out so bad it scared the living snot out of me. My son, I got a bad back, and my son hands me 3 gummies that have what's the TPC THC in it, which is the real pot, right?
Yeah.
Well, he gave me 3 of those and said, "Take all 3 of these." I took them, and I took a trip and never left the farm.
You forgot you didn't even have a back, didn't you?
No, I forgot everything. I like the song said, I took a trip and never left the farm.
You needed some of that for you and your teammates when you played for Knight during them rough practices.
Oh my God. I that stuff, I couldn't move.
Either that, they got the edibles now. Could you imagine making one of them Buckeyes, filling it with weed, and giving it to Coach Knight before practice?
These were gummies.
I know, but see, you give something like that to Coach
Knight. They were good. They tasted good. They were fun to eat going down. They're flavored. I got a red one.
It was like an hour later when you were sitting there babbling to yourself incoherently, right?
I was so starving. I think I ate 3/4 of a bag of Doritos.
At least you didn't eat more gummies.
And I was supposed to help my wife and son clean the grill because we were getting ready for the opening up our deck with the pool and everything, getting ready for the summer. And we had to clean the grill and get it all ready. And I couldn't move off the couch.
Well, I'll tell you what. Your son should have had to do everything anyways because he knew what 3 would do to you.
Oh, man.
It's a wonder there's no videos floating around anywhere of Steve Risley, with 3 THC gummies.
He gave me the whole bag. He went and bought me a whole bag of them. I think there was like 10 in them or something like that. I gave them back to him and said, "Don't ever bring these around me again."
And then it makes you wonder why people want to sit around and be stoned, doesn't it?
I don't. It was not a pleasant experience.
No, because you thought you were going to die, didn't you, Risley?
Well, no, but you had no control over yourself.
All right, let's transition.
I couldn't even pee.
Is that because you couldn't stand up, or you couldn't?
I couldn't stand up.
You tried to pee and you couldn't find it to hold on to it. All right, that was rude. I'm sorry about that. All right,
that's all right.
Let's transition to Deshaun Watson, who went from being the most sought-after player in football.
I hope he was taking gummies too.
I just hope he didn't do it. I have a hard time thinking he did because I like Deshaun Watson a lot.
I like Deshaun Watson, and I think the way the narrative reads with the 7 women, he's been accused by 7 massage therapists.
Well, I think it's up to like 20 now, Steve.
Is it up to 20 now? So it's grown. But their story is fairly descriptive because when I was reading the 7, they all were separate, but they all pretty much, because it happened over a long period of time. But the MO was almost identical in every one of them. And it can be portrayed as innocent, and egotistical in the sense that it was an athlete like a Deshaun Watson who is kowtowed to left and right all the time and generally gets whatever he wants anyway. But the narrative by the women doesn't give you any indication that there was any sex involved, that it was basically aggressive behavior on the table and lewd actions by Deshaun while the women were trying to give him legitimate massages. This wasn't at a massage parlor, which we don't have any idea what really goes on there unless you talk to the owner of the New England Patriots. He can probably then tell you what goes on.
Kraft knows all about massage.
Robert Kraft knows what goes on in a massage parlor. These were actually licensed massage therapists, my understanding is.
Which Robert Kraft didn't use.
He didn't use.
This is the bad thing. I think that Deshaun Watson needs to make this go away as quickly as possible. And I think
he's going to pay a lot of money.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, he's either going to pay a lot of money or he's going to take a risk. He's going to let it go to court. And the problem with civil lawsuits, there's no arrest warrants or a guilty verdict.
Burden of proof is very low.
Anybody can sue for any reason. But however, I think Watson needs to end this now before the Houston Police Department, Harris County District Attorney decided to conduct an investigation and then possibly file criminal charges against him, which can happen. And while a criminal case could proceed despite an out-of-court settlement, I mean, even if they have an out-of-court settlement, they could. And without the cooperation of the accusers, it's a lot less likely. So the best possible scenario for Watson is that Watson and his accusers were to reach a financial settlement, sign non-disclosure agreements. Watson doesn't have to admit that he's guilty. And, teams will lower their trade offers. He will play one more year with the Texans, during which, he'll be booed mercilessly at road games. And the Texans will trade him after the next season. That's the best possible case scenario. But the thing is this, if I'm Deshaun Watson and I didn't do this, I don't want to pay anybody off because it makes it look like I did it. It's like Big Ben Roethlisberger, pays a couple people off. Peyton Manning paid somebody off, and they make it go away instead of going to court. Now, to me, not going to court means you probably did this. Now, the fact that all of these are civil suits and not one of these 19 or 20 women has actually filed criminal charges really makes this look iffy to me on the part of the women. And I can say this right now. I think that if he did this and he sexually harassed women, I don't even think he should go to jail. I think that it is shoot his ass because I think people like that are absolute scumbags. But I also think this. If you find out that these women are lying, same thing should be done to them. I'm serious. I mean, when you're talking about somebody who is making physical advances at somebody that are unwanted, rubbing their junk on them, and they're an animal. If you're doing that, you're an animal. And I don't think there's any place in society for that. Of course, I know there's places in society for people to do even worse shit than that nowadays. But that makes him a complete scumbag. He should not even be able to walk the face of the earth.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing.
I think it's really possible he didn't do a damn thing.
I read 7 of the complaints, and I before it got 7 complaints were written out and drafted. These were the women's complaints. None of them said that there was anything other than lewdness.
What's lewdness?
I don't know. I guess lewdness would be coming into a room, a massage room, with nothing on but a towel not big enough to cover your junk, and laying down, and then starting to try to degenerate, based on what these women were reporting, tried to generate a sexual conversation with the woman. Now, my understanding is, and I didn't see it in any of these complaints, one woman claims that, it might be one of the later ones after the first 7, claims that Deshaun forced the woman to have oral sex. That now bridges a whole new problem, because now you're into touching and everything like that. I think it changes it. But and again, I'm not defending it. If I get the one time I ever got a massage in my life, I had a T-shirt on and gym shorts.
And a guy named Bob, who was 6'4", 300 pounds.
I think it was a guy named Bob who was bigger than me.
Yeah, so I'm saying this. I just don't know why, especially if you're saying that he forced you to perform oral sex on him, that you would. And I know this. I know a lot of women are never believed, so they don't come out and say anything.
I know.
But don't come out and go to civil court. Come out if you're going to come out with all these other people.
Go to criminal
court, because you can still take him to civil court afterwards to sue him.
I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV, but I don't know that any criminal thing was done. I guess if lewdness and that is, I don't know, because I've never gotten involved in that kind of stuff. I've been married 37 years, faithfully to my wife, so I have never gone to a massage therapist or a massage parlor.
I think a massage therapist is not cheating on your wife. A massage parlor is.
The only time I've ever gotten a massage is when we go on one of these Pfizer corporate trips, and you get free massage as part of your package of going on the trip.
By the guy named Bob.
Which is why your drugs cost a lot more money, because they give us all these nice trips.
I thought it was because of the payoffs they gave to Congress and Senate.
It might be that too. I'm sure that's part of it. But I read some things that I wanted to address with you. One of the lawyers just said that basically this all happens because the NFL creates a culture to allow sexual harassment. Comment on that. Does the NFL have a stake in this game, a hand in this game, as to how they react on how they claim to be proactive? They claim to say they're doing things, but it's kind of like that same thing when the mayor tells you he's fixing potholes in your city, but that one damn pothole that always tears up your tire has been there for 4 years.
Yeah, I would say
the same thing with the NFL.
With the history of the stuff that's been covered up, from Peyton Manning before he even got into the NFL to Brett Favre with the pictures to the New York Reporter. I mean, didn't he still play after that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, they've allowed it. They've allowed a lot of things in the NFL because unless it hurts their bottom line, they don't care. If you go out and you start making a big deal out of what Peyton Manning did with the female trainer in 1997 or 98, maybe people don't all love Peyton Manning so much. With Brett Favre, they kind of pushed it away. It went away quick. How about this? Deshaun Watson, is a black quarterback. And I know that I said that racism is not as bad as what it used to be. But if this was Tom Brady or Joe Burrow, would it be treated the same way?
I don't know the answer to that. I would think if it was Tom Brady, it would explode into a major. I think there are people looking any way they can to bring Tom Brady down.
Or do you think the NFL just pays all these women off to go away and nobody ever says a word about it?
I got to believe there's probably some of that going on.
And the other thing is this: you have a very powerful owner in Houston, and McNair.
Yeah.
Is it possible that maybe he's behind this? Now, I've heard a lot of people say it. I know it's
behind this in what
theory.
section that he's paying people off or what?
I mean, what the hell? Is it beyond belief that
he wants to get Deshaun Jackson in trouble, lower his value on his next contract? I mean, I don't know.
He doesn't want Deshaun Watson to leave. So if you've lowered his value, maybe Deshaun Watson will stay. I don't know. Maybe him and Deshaun Watson got something going on behind the scenes we don't know about.
We may be overthinking it. I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But the thing that's not overthinking is the fact that these are all civil lawsuits. That bothers me.
Yeah, which tells you that if a lawyer is involved, well, I think a lawyer probably will look at it and say you can get more money easier in a civil lawsuit than you can a criminal lawsuit. You can't get money in a criminal lawsuit. All you get out of it in a criminal lawsuit is just sentencing and jail time or probation or sexual harassment classes or whatever. You don't get money. Nobody pays you in a criminal lawsuit because generally what happens is you get a criminal lawsuit, as what happened with OJ. They lost the criminal lawsuit. The Browns immediately turned around and filed a $30 million civil lawsuit and won that in days. The OJ trial went almost a year, I think. And the civil lawsuit it was over and done with. So I think the lawyers took it right to civil, thinking, hey, I can make a buck off this. They'll pay off and shut up, which is what they're looking for. But I don't want to, to me, I don't want to believe that the women just get together and make these stories up and come, that these incidents probably did happen. And so, therefore, is Deshaun Jackson guilty of harassing women?
Well, if you think he did it, then he is.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing about it. And I mean, the bad thing is this is hideous either way. It's either hideous that he did it or hideous that they're accusing him of it. And I know a lot of people will say, well, 20 people said it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I think we live in a lot more complicated society today than what we used to live in. So I'm not going to say he's guilty or not guilty. I'll say this. Should he play? If the court case, I'm sure the court cases won't happen probably till even during the season or maybe even after the season. Should he be allowed to play under this?
Well, that's the $10 question. Is the NFL just too lenient on these athletes that get discovered, secondly have to go through this mess, and then thirdly those that get convicted or it becomes obvious? I mean, who was the one? Was it Ray? They had the tape of him beating the crap out of his girlfriend. Ray
Rice.
Who?
Rice.
Ray Rice. I mean, okay, that's evidence. I mean, he's done. The NFL, does the NFL at that point say you are banned for life from the
NFL? For this, I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, at some point, if you want things to stop, you have to make a point. If you know what I mean.
You have to make a point. I believe it that you say if it's proven, then you're out of the NFL. You can apply for reinstatement at some point.
But I do believe this,
like Pete Rose baseball, like the Pete Rose baseball banning. He can reapply now for baseball. He's chosen not to reapply, but baseball said you're welcome to reapply now. But they banned him for life for gambling on his own teams.
Well, how about this? The NFL was so bad in the past, and this has to come from high school and colleges too, that let athletes that are really good get away with things just because they're really good and they bring money into the school. But do you remember Leonard Little? Leonard Little, I think it was either in college. I think it was in college, 1998. He actually got drunk, drove his car, hit a car, and killed a woman. He got a few months probation and then played the next year in the Super Bowl for the Rams and had a 10-year career like nothing ever happened. I mean, that right there will tell you race didn't really matter there. They allowed him to play. Ray Rice would have been allowed to play if the video wouldn't have popped up. I mean, the thing that's a killer, the reason now I think people get penalized is because video pops up or an audio pops up that everybody can see how miserable a human being they are. Because if you just hear Ray Rice, slapped his wife in an elevator, It's not the same thing as look at Ray Rice slap his wife, 3 or 4 times, bounce her head off the elevator, knock her on the ground. That's a whole different narrative. And I think the only reason the NFL is starting to do anything about anything that happens is because they almost have to, because video exists of stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. Here's another question. I mean, do professional athletes just have too much free time on their hands? The exorbitant amount of money we're paying these guys, should they be doing more community service work with their time? If they're not at practice, training, or playing, should they be kind of required to say you have to give 4 hours a day to some type of community service or something?
Actually, they do. I mean, most of them do. I mean, you have to give guest appearances at schools and stuff. The teams will do that at different places, but it's not that often. But that's not the problem.
It's the third string left tackle or right guard that goes in.
No, not all the time. Everybody has to.
Starters. I never see the starters there doing that.
They do. Some do. Joe Burrow's done it all around Cincinnati.
Yeah, well, and J.J. Watt did.
Andy Dalton used to go out of his
way
Watt,
to do it. Yeah,
but I think
I never saw Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck at a school doing these things.
No, because Peyton might have found a trainer and rubbed his junk in the face. But when we're looking at this,
come on, he's one of my heroes.
He shouldn't be. Just read about it, and it's definitely happened. But Jamie Nautright was her name, Nautright. You can find all kind of Sports Illustrated articles about it. They went after him until he got to the NFL. But I think the sad thing is probably 90% of the players are good guys that do that. You get the 10% that are bad to make the 90% look bad. It's like it is. It's like it is everywhere. It's like always said. Yeah. You go to Lowe's and there's 60 employees. 10 of those guys are assholes, and they do stuff they shouldn't do, and they're despicable. And they cheat on their husband. They cheat on their wives. They beat their dogs. They beat their kids. It's just there's an element of society, and unfortunately, it has gotten worse over the last 30 years, and it's probably going to continue to get worse the way things are going right now. It's not going to get any better, and it doesn't matter who's in charge, Republicans or Democrats. It gets worse no matter what. But I think the majority of these guys are good people. So I don't think that there's a bunch of guys out there beating the hell out of their wives, anything like that. So
read Tom's comment. It's pretty smart. It's good observation.
Tom Leiter, look at advertising. They want the women audience. They have to be hard on these guys. That's true. I mean, they do, and they should be. If these guys are doing that, they should be hard on them.
I think the NFL doesn't tap into the women audience nearly enough.
Oh, I think they've been trying. You got women coaches now. You got women officials.
Deshaun Watson is not helping that cause, Mike.
Deshaun Watson helps that cause if they use him as an example and do something.
Well, but is the NFL? Thanks for the comment, Tom. I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
Is that? Are they going to do that? I don't. I think this gets settled out of court financially by somebody, either the owner of Houston or the NFL in general, and somebody has a lecture with Deshaun in the locker room and tells him, "Hey, next time we're going to cut you," and he plays football and everything's all.
I don't think so. I think what happens is if he settles out of court, they suspend him for a season.
No way.
Tom is right on this. And they will
Tom is right. Yeah, but I don't think
the thing is this. If he pays them off, he's guilty.
Well, I wonder if he pays them off. If the owner of the team doesn't pay him off.
I guarantee you the owner of Houston, Texas is not paying Deshaun Watson's bills right now.
Okay.
Because Deshaun Watson wants the hell out of there.
Leave. Yeah, he wants out of there. So, yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if McNair was behind it because, I mean, there's a lot of hideous crap that goes on in the world now. You never know. I don't think that's what it is. I hope it's not what it is. But nothing would surprise me nowadays. Steve, we're at 39 minutes. You told me this was going to be a 30-minute show. We were going to go.
Well, this is a good conversation, but let's get out of here.
I know, but I'm trying to get a yellow lab. I'm trying to get a yellow lab, and I'm trying to put the deposit on it. But if somebody gets to it before me, I don't get it.
Well, let me let you get off the phone and get your yellow lab because God knows I love dogs.
I do too, a lot more than people.
I love dogs more than people.
Who doesn't?
They're more loyal. They're cleaner. They're nicer. You know, my Aussie is laying right here at my feet, waiting for me to get up and take him for a walk and throw tennis balls with him and feed him, and then he's going to sit and watch the Masters with me all the rest of the day.
You know, he just does that because it makes it easier for him to take a nap.
There you go.
See, that's what I do with, I got the Major League Baseball package, and like 10 o'clock every night, I got to go to bed earlier now because I got to get up early in the morning. So I turn on a baseball game. Never fails.
Yeah.
Almost never make it through a whole half an inning. Of course, sometimes half innings, 35 minutes.
But I got up at 5:45 this morning and started watching the Masters on ESPN Plus because I'm in LA. It's 3-hour time difference.
All right. Well, Steve, we're going to go ahead.
By the way, my other Aussie is chasing the pool guy and the lawn mowers guys around the yard.
You got lawnmower guys. You're too lazy to cut your own damn grass, Steve.
That came with the property. What am I going to say? It was part of the deal. I'm not.
So you don't have to pay for the lawn boy, right?
No, I have to pay for the lawn boy. Or the pool guy.
Okay.
They just show up and do it.
All right, Steve. We're going to wrap it up.
Tom, thanks for the comment. I appreciate it. I think you're right on.
Great comment, Tom.
Great comment. You know, the NFL needs to gear its advertising. I'd love to see the impact of what this has if the NFL went after female fans more and started gearing advertising more toward them. And
I think they are.
See if they took a harder stance on the Deshaun Watson situation and others like it.
All right, Steve. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. You can follow Steve Risley at srisley34 on Twitter. You can follow me at Grilling Truth. Make sure you go to our Facebook page, like our page there. But for now, for Survive and Advance, he's Steve Risley. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.